Thank you, Ritu and Arundhati, and a very good afternoon, evening to all the ladies and gentlemen here. Let's first begin by saying and asking, why is cybersecurity an important conversation to have on a day like today? I think we'll all recollect the JLR cyber attack incident that crippled production and the UK government had to step in. Something that's reserved only for systemic crisis. Or last year, Taylor Swift's deep fake porn which flooded the internet. The world we live in is increasingly so digital that the repercussions of any cyber attack hit deeply at the government level, enterprise level, and at the personal level. Which is why this conversation is so important to have, and we've got the perfect guest joining in today. Sachin, let me begin with you. It's not just about data. It's about control. It's about power. How big is the problem right now when it comes to cyber attack and security?
Thanks, Rima. Great question. How big is the problem? Right now, the cost of cybercrime in 2025 is around $10 trillion, and it's going to become $14 trillion in 3 years. Let this number sink in. Only 2 countries have GDP more than $10 trillion. The entire health industry is $10 trillion. So globally, we are talking about this scale. And these are not teenagers sitting in basement and attacking us. These are highly sophisticated professionals, big enterprises, sometimes nation-state actors. They might be having a conference like this, sharing best practices in their enterprises. Everything from schools to hospitals to energy grids, it is on their radar. And now talking about India, just seeking some cues from past panel, I think we are witnessing a nation which is leapfrogging into digital world. We are the #1 payments market globally. Somebody said 20 billion transactions. We are also the largest YouTube audience. We are also the 2nd largest Android market. 65% of population below 35 years of age. So clearly, there's a huge set of vulnerable youth which is shaping and also getting shaped by the digital world.
Interesting. Jay, hi. You've built and led Kotak 811. And I believe Kotak 811 was named after 8th November 2016, the demonetization date, the day that changed India's and turbocharged India's digital banking system. So now tomorrow you complete 9 years, 9-year anniversary. Congratulations.
That's correct. We're still only 9 years young.
9 years young. But so much has changed in the last 9 years. How do you feel about cybersecurity today versus what you did when you started off?
As a business leader, I feel the same way as I did 9 years ago in the context that banks are custodians of customers' money and custodians of trust. And so we have to do whatever it takes to prevent that from getting eroded. How that manifests itself changes year after year. For example, in 2021, we had a video KYC regulation that allowed us to do KYC on video. Today, AI deepfakes present the kind of problem that could substantially undermine or change that entire framework. So we are constantly evolving and constantly fighting to ensure that the trust and integrity that our customers have with us remains.
Sandeep, you've been in the industry for decades. While AI brings a lot of promise and opportunity, it also brings new threat actors. And every time they're getting smarter and smarter. How different are cyber attacks in an AI-enabled world versus what they used to be now?
So couple of things for context, right? I think we heard earlier that these aren't people who are sitting in a basement or kids sitting in a basement.
It's like almost organized crime now.
They are very sophisticated techies who are actually doing all of this. And I think with the availability of AI tools that are available, it gives them a lot more ways to, as they say now, it's smart logging in versus hacking. That's being used. And now once they enter through the AI portals and others, It gives them access to individually identifiable information. A lot of the company's assets that are their priced assets. I'll give you a couple of data points. We do a cost of data breach report every year, and I think you heard some of the numbers earlier in terms of what data breaches cost us. But if you look at, when you do a study and ask people how well they are prepared, there's only 37% of companies that sort of cited that they've got controls built around their AI implementations that have effective protection and security protocols and so on. Only about 60% said that they've actually got some form of AI governance that they've built that monitors how models are used, how AI applications are built, how they are deployed, and so on. So I think this whole notion of, we claim that we are very worried about data protection and so on, but with AI and the usage of AI tools that's becoming rampant, there's a lot of it which is out there and vulnerable and exposed to cyber attacks.
Especially now, Sachin, when we get into agentic AI, right? Here it's an AI which is able to attack without human intervention. It's not AI assisting anymore. It's AI acting autonomously. You almost feel like it's an AI versus AI cyber battle taking place.
Yeah, that's right. Would like to step back and discuss, share about Defender's dilemma. Many audience may not know. So if I'm an attacker and I want to steal a wallet, all I have to do is find one wallet in the crowd and steal it. But as a defender, I need to protect all the wallets all the time. So when you talk about agentic AI, I think defenders deal with a lot of drudgery, a lot of grunt work, and 80% of our work can be offloaded to an agentic AI, while the workforce can be reoriented to focus on more intuitive and strategic things. So I think we believe that this is the time that AI will reverse the defender's dilemma, and it will tilt the balance in favor of defenders, because defenders can now use agentic AI to defend against the AI. And somebody talked about keyword as invisible. I think we are looking forward to creating an invisible shield, like a human immune system powered by AI, which is constantly identifying new threat actors, constantly evolving, and making sure we are constantly protected.
Jay, you said banks are the custodian of data of trust. Now, whenever there is competition maybe can beat you in terms of pricing, maybe in terms of customer experience. But do you think your moat as a bank is your trust? Is that the long-term advantage, competitive advantage you have, trust?
I think trust is an output metric that comes from years and decades of doing the right thing, doing right by your customer, and the word bank, the regulatory environment also helps. So in the short term, banks can take advantage of the fact that we are trusted. But in the long term, if we don't keep doing what is right for customers and innovating and adapting to the times, trust is not to be taken for granted.
But do you think a digital bank is more secure than a traditional bank?
Kotak 811 is not a digital bank. Kotak 811 is a platform within Kotak Mahindra Bank. So I think that should tell you how I feel about that.
But as a broader, from an industry point of view, if we do see an increase in the number of digital banks, how would it compare?
I think you have to be careful with how far you go down this road. But broadly, the world is digitizing really fast, and so you will have to build trust and security guardrails around end-to-end digital. And there will come a point where digital itself wins decisively and physical may be less relevant, though I don't think that point is in the very near future.
Yeah, but I think, look, I'll just add to this. I think Jay made some very important points. That at the end of the day, I think trust sort of builds over a period of time in terms of how you continue to deliver services and so on. I'm a fundamental believer that technology or AI or any form of technology or digital assets that people will use are those that people will trust. And you need to sort of get that built in. So there's a lot of things today that I think people are doing, such as, zero-based architectures. You don't trust. It's zero trust architecture. You don't trust anything. You make sure that you do have protocols where there's only a need to know basis. That's the way access controls and others get built in. But those, I think, will have to evolve and strengthen over a period of time, just as the bad actors get worse. I think that's where we're going as a business and an industry.
Sachin, I also want to bring in the personal angle over here. So far, we've been discussing at an enterprise level. But see a company like Google. It's not just a tech company. It's where our digital profile resides. You know my emails via Gmail. You know what I watch via YouTube. You know what I search via Google search. And you know where I travel via Google Maps. So in that context, how do you all, because you're again custodians of so much personal data, how do you all see security and what are you doing to protect individual data?
Got it. I'll start with mission of my team is to keep everyone safe at scale. And when we say everyone, we mean it. It's not just Google, Alphabet. It's not just the billions of users that Google apps have, but everyone safe at scale. So starting with, we make sure we have an invisible shield behind every product so that we secure them. So when you get up in the morning, open the Gmail, 99.9% of all spams are taken care. When you go to a website, we scan billions of web pages and issue millions of warnings saying, this is not a safe site, can you go back? We also have privacy and security by design. So while we are custodians of data, we make sure we provide transparency and all the tools to everyone to decide where their data will go and live. And finally, we have seen there are novel attacks in India, and we have a Google Safety Engineering Center. This is Asia's first. We launched in India this year. This is where we connect with local academia. We connect with our ecosystem, fact checkers, publishers, government, and industry to make sure we keep the entire ecosystem safe. And that's one of the initiatives that we have.
Sandeep, AI is making everything smarter. But quantum computing can break the smartest of encryption. Does that mean that there is a possibility that everything we know about cybersecurity will not hold true in a quantum era because quantum can break the toughest cyber defense?
So I'll make a overarching statement. I think as quantum computing becomes more mainstream, it is real today, by the way. Quantum is very real.
Even at scale?
Yeah, people are using it. We've just announced two banks who are starting to use it for portfolio management and getting brilliant results out of it, right? So quantum's here. I think what we'll see is if you talk to a pessimist, they'll say it's probably 4 years out. You talk to an optimist, they'll say it's 2 years out. So quantum's here. Once quantum is operating at scale, it will equip bad actors to become worse and bad actors to sort of hack things a lot faster, right? And even today, I think there is a notion amongst bad actors where they're saying, let's harvest now and we'll decrypt it later. But quantum technology will allow you much faster decryption of what we know today as security protocols. So we actually have to start worrying about it right now. When I have conversations in Delhi with our, IT ministries and science and technology ministries, even telecoms, right? They are all starting to think about quantum cryptography protocols that are going to be important. US has been a little bit further ahead on this. NIST has published 3 cybersecurity, quantum cryptography protocols, two of which we've actually helped author. And these are now going to start to, I think everyone around the world has to start to look at it, because this is a technology that is going to equip bad actors getting worse. So the notion of building in quantum safe capability within your systems is important. So even, for example, data security software and others, we've started to build quantum safe capability into those applications, those software capabilities, because I think that's sort of where we are going to have to be ready with.
Can I quickly add
Yeah,
something?
sure.
I think this danger is real, that with quantum coming, the current encryption can be broken, and Google is making strides into quantum computing. We recently launched an algorithm and one step closer to the real world application. But Google is also investing in post-quantum cryptography, and we believe once launched, we will protect the passwords for decades.
Jay, in the event of a cyber attack, where does accountability lie? Who owns the cyber risk, to your mind?
That depends on where the weakness was. If it's a weakness on the bank side or the customer provider side, the accountability lies there. Otherwise, you have to give me more context for that.
Would any of you, gentlemen, come in on accountability?
I'd say it's a joint responsibility across the board. I do believe now that cybersecurity needs to be a boardroom issue for every enterprise. It is becoming now. I think it's something that I know for a fact. It's always a board agenda for us every quarter, and it is something that everyone needs to look at. I think when we talk to the government, I think the government's very, very quick to say that, listen, cybersecurity should only be the responsibility of the government and watchdogs. It's something that every enterprise has to think about, and it's something that I think every consumer should think about in terms of applications that they use and digital assets that they are using.
So, Sachin, if there's one thing every individual out here should change in their digital behavior, starting from tonight, to protect themselves digitally, what should it be? One thing.
One thing. I think one of the biggest threats we are all facing is deep fakes and misinformation. It's possible that one of your relative calls you with the deep faked image and asks you to deposit money in the hospital. So what you can do is three things. One is talk to your family and come up with a code, a common code that you only understand. For example, in my family, we have a book name. So ask the question, like, what is the book name? If the person cannot answer, most likely deepfake. Second, ask them to move hand in front of their face. Deepfake does not allow that to happen. So for now, things might change. And finally, ask them, I'm going to cancel the call and call you back. Because spoofing can happen one way, but not the other way. So if you can have these three things there, you might protect yourself from deepfake.
These are very interesting, hacks that we should all remember. Thank you very much, gentlemen, Jay, Sandeep, and Sachin for joining in and sharing your insights. Great, insightful conversation.